NHL is officially back. Today, the league and their Players Association finalizing their agreement for a 56-game season starting on January 13th. The Blues will start training camp here in town starting January 3rd, and then they will jump right into the season. The Stanley Cup playoffs are slated to start May 8th and will last into July. The Blues will be making a move playing in the West Division this season. This weekend, I spoke to Jeremy Rutherford, a Blues beat writer for The Athletic, about the division changes and what the Blues will look like without their veteran key players.
Because of the issues with the border and teams not being able to go into Canada, they're trying to create a Canadian division. So they needed to break up the other 24 teams into 3 U.S. divisions. And the Blues, I believe they wanted to go Westbrook. I really do. I think that the fact you're going to have some warm weather cities, if you're going to be on the road for a week, 10 days straight, it's a nice place to be. It is a tough division when you look at the teams, Colorado and Las Vegas, but I think the Blues still like their chances. The big issue here is that if you have the late night games, you're talking about late starts, potentially 8 and 9 o'clock. The fans, as we know, aren't real fond of that.
What do you see as maybe an obstacle or hurdle that they might encounter? I know you mentioned the Canadian teams because of the restrictions they have in place for COVID-19. So do you see any hurdles with that?
Yeah, Brooke, there are still some issues in terms of where these games are going to be played. Obviously, COVID has affected the entire globe, but there are some states, some counties that won't allow games. And so we'll have to see how that shakes out. For example, we know that the Bay Area has had a lot of restrictions. And so can the Blues play in San Jose? We just don't know yet. Right now, I think what they're trying to decide is, can they play in these empty arenas in all of them? Or will they have to have hub cities? That doesn't mean a bubble. It doesn't mean an airtight bubble like we saw in Edmonton and Toronto, but rather hub cities where multiple teams will go and play and then return home and take a break. So I think that that's the deciding factor, is where they're going to play these games when they do return.
And so now jumping into the Blues, I mean, it's going to be a very different looking team in a lot of ways, because you have those veteran guys gone. No more Jake Allen, no Alex Pietrangelo. And now, as we just found out last week, no Alexander Steen as he's retiring. What do you kind of foresee happening with the Blues as they move forward with a very different looking group than what we've seen in recent years?
Yeah, Brooke, you look at Alexander Steen, he's 36 years old. He's at the end of his career, obviously, and he's a fourth-line guy. Still a good player, been a good player his entire career, but you move on and the roster evolves. But I think where you lose an Alexander Steen, as you mentioned, Brooke, you start to add up the names. Jake Allen, Alex Pietrangelo. Let's not forget about Jay Bouwmeester. This team has lost a lot of leadership just over the past year. It really has. So Alexander Steen's voice in the locker room, I look at him as an old-school guy. It's going to be tough to replace. But the Blues do have some guys in place, a Ryan O'Reilly, a Braden Shen. They're hoping that that type of player, those types of guys, can step in and take over that leadership role.
We're still waiting to hear about Major League Baseball's plan for the new year. But while we wait, this past week we heard from Cardinals manager Mike Shildt during the virtual winter meetings. It's been a quiet offseason for the Cardinals. No big moves yet, but there's several big questions heading into the season that Mike Shildt addressed, such as, will Yadier Molina and Adam Wainwright return, and the possibility of adding a proven bat to the lineup.
I don't think there's a entity involved in this that doesn't want them to come back. It's just a matter of how it can get worked out. So, you know, that's a big part of you know, our organization. But you know, time will tell, and it'll probably tell relatively soon. And relative to, you know, thinking about, you know, life without Yadi, you know, my head's not there. I don't, you know, choose to put my mindset there because, you know, it's a hard place for me to go. Mentally, I'm not naive that it may not, you know, he may not come back. I get that, and then we'll pivot. But as far as putting mental energy towards thinking about number 4 not being behind the plate for us, I haven't put a lot of consideration to that.
I know you're not a guy who wants to bang the table for outside players. You focus more on who you have in house. But based off of your analysis of the offense so far this offseason, what do you think the lineup needs to kind of maybe get to where you think it can be?
I do like the pieces that we have and the players we have, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to work with them and help them, you know, get the most out of their God-given ability. And part 2 of that question is, yeah, anytime you could improve your club or put an anchor in the middle of your lineup, definitely be very welcoming, because it just has residual effect. You know, not only that, it helps other people in the lineup, it lengthens the lineup. and it just makes everybody around them better when you have that. It's not to say we can't still function with if we don't make that kind of move or whatever that looks like.
Well, hopefully an announcement will be coming out soon about baseball. But coming up, we take a look back at this week in sports history. That's ahead with the flashback on Sports Sunday.